This channel is for educational purposes only. Make sure you do your own due diligence before making any investments. And there is inherent risk in trading, so it's speculative. Just make sure you keep that in mind. Hi, this is Joe. We're going to talk about the S&P and the QQQ today. I want to give an update on all the market conditions. And I want to make sure you understand how important it is to keep this as a discipline for not only the markets, but any stock that you're interested in as well. Being consistent is I think one of the most important characteristics you can have in terms of if you're going to be successful in the market. And part of the reason is that if you do it on a weekly basis, there are times where nothing is happening. You're doing the same thing and you're like, nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. And you do it week in and week out. And then all of a sudden you notice a difference. And it really just jumps out at you. And you have a big advantage over the average person who's not doing this on a disciplined basis, on a regular basis. And so you just want to keep that in mind. I want to make sure I emphasize that this week. We're going to go into the market conditions now. Really wasn't a significant change in terms of the trending conditions. I'm going to go through that on the S&P and the QQQ in a minute. I wanted to make mention of the volatility change. We're starting to see, and I'm actually going to bring up the chart on a volatility basis. So if we look at this ATR, this is the average true range for the S&P 500 index. And I've overlaid a 18 MA moving average. And if you notice, we've been trending pretty high. As the market's been trending higher, we've seen this just trending lower below its moving average. And now all of a sudden we see it popping up above the moving average. And volatility had gotten pretty low. It kind of gotten into an area where we'd seen a bottom in the past in terms of the volatility. And so it does make sense. We're starting to see a little bit of an increase. It's something I had mentioned as we started the new year. It makes sense for this to take place. But it is something we need to keep an eye on because now we've gone to neutral. If this keeps pushing higher and this moving average turns up, we'd have to turn this part of the market indicator or market condition to a negative. So want to make sure we're aware of that. The other thing I wanted to show was the overbought, oversold condition of the RSI 5. So if I go to this chart, we've reached 80.3. And I have mentioned over the last couple of weeks that, getting up over 80, I think is a higher risk level. And you can see over the past, it doesn't mean that it's automatically going to reverse to the downside. But the way I look at it is once you get over 80, you need to be a lot more selective about new buying. Up until that point, in the 70s, 75 even, I'm willing to go ahead. If I find a stock that I really like, I'm willing to go ahead and buy. But now we're getting up into a level, especially when the sentiment numbers are, still in the mid 40s, that I would consider this overbought condition, just to have a little bit more elevated risk in the near term. I'm not necessarily calling for a big reversal here, but, I think you just have to be a little bit more cautious when this indicator gets overbought like this. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean be a seller. I still think you need to manage each position individually. If you own an individual stock and you have a program you're running with it and you have a scaling out procedure or whatever, it hasn't hit resistance, whatever you use, keep doing that. And I'm not telling you to sell out just because this has gotten up over 80. I'm just saying you got to be a little bit more cautious. So I just wanted to make sure I covered that. And then again, the sentiment numbers have reached 40 or at 43%. They've come down a little bit, but they're still in that danger zone. Anything between 40 and 50, I would consider to be kind of in the danger zone. When you get over 50, that's where you start to get a little bit really concerned. So that actually didn't happen this time. It came pretty close. Let's start looking at the trend and momentum. And if you notice, we still have all four time frames with a positive trend. The momentum is which the first four letters, the MWDH, that's for trend. And then the second for MWDH is for the momentum. So you can see we have 4 pluses in the trend category, and we're a little spotty when it comes to the momentum. So let's go ahead and look at that right now. Again, if you go through and look at all 4 time frames, and I like to look at the market in this fashion, I put the monthly in the bottom left, weekly in the bottom right, daily in the upper right, and then an hourly in the upper left. And having this sort of flow, I've done this for years, and I really find it to be very useful. I can look at a monthly and a weekly together very quickly down here. I can look at a weekly and a daily together here, and then I can look at a daily and an hourly together this way. If you can get a software that'll allow you to do this, it saves you a tremendous amount of time, and it gives you so much more insight into what is taking place in the market. You can see if any individual time frame is getting too extended, like we're starting to see on the monthly chart here. We're getting a little bit farther away. We're starting to get away a little bit on the weekly chart. But not to the point where it's in a dangerous position. But it's just something I think is important to recognize. So let's look at the weekly chart. I want to continue to emphasize the weekly chart, and I want to make sure you understand why. The conditions on this chart are very strong. The 18 is above the 40. They're rising at about the same rate. You've got a MACD that's confirming with new highs. Along with price, and ADX showing pretty good strength above 25 and rising. And green DI, I'd like to see make another new high here to confirm, but overall, the conditions on this chart are very good. So when that's the case, the 18 on this time frame becomes very important to me. So I kind of view this as the controlling time frame for the market right now. This is the controlling time frame. This is really the time frame that the market is trending off of. And so as long as we can hold above the 18 week, and we can test it and come down like we've tested it before, but as long as we don't break that, then I consider this to be a pretty solid trending environment for this index. Let's go to the daily, because I've talked about this now for several weeks. We haven't seen confirmation. What's happened today is the MACD has crossed back above the signal line for the first time since this consolidation pattern. And if you notice, even though we were making slightly higher highs and higher lows, it really was more of a sideways pattern. And now it's looking a little bit stronger. And that's the reason why we started to see an increase in the volatility, because we've been pretty quiet going sideways. And now we might actually see some type of expansion to the upside. What I wanted to do is make sure you understand, I'm going to actually blow up the green DI and the ADX. So look at what's taking place here. We've got a peak here. Actually, we've made a peak here, and then another lower peak right here. And then another lower peak, another lower peak, another lower peak, another lower peak, and now we're still making another lower peak. What we're looking for is a move that takes out a prior peak. And that would signify that the green is starting to show new expansion, because really it's been in a contraction phase. It was expanding to the upside, and now it's just contracting back down, but not to the point where red has taken over. So it's not like it came down under 25 and red went up and took over. It just has been working this down and working down towards 25. And now if we can see this break out above this prior peak, I think that we could see some short-term follow-through. So it's something to be on the lookout for. I do like the fact that the MACD is crossing back above the signal line. Now, I left this as negative because we don't have confirmation yet. Right now, we've made a higher high in price, and MACD is still making a lower high, and we don't have confirmation on the DI line, and ADX is way down at 15. So it's concerning. I'm not saying it's not concerning. I'm just saying you have to give its credence that what's taking place now is some slight improvement in the momentum conditions. Now, one of the other things I wanted to mention here is that even though we had divergence in place, and I have said this several times, and if you go back through my videos on momentum divergence, this is a big key for me. I don't let the divergence, the momentum indicators trigger me in. I make price trigger me in. And we never got to close below the 18 MA on the time frame that was showing momentum divergence. So there really was never a signal here. We would have needed to close below this 18 MA, and then I prefer to see a break below, a move below that closing low to confirm. So that's kind of how I look at a reversal of a moving average. And yeah, we got down below it a little bit intraday, but we never really closed down below and followed through. So wanted to make sure I made that point. If we look at the hourly briefly, we did have a kind of a dart down move to start the year, and it's recovered very well. And I'm going to take this out so you can see the momentum has recovered very, very well. We've got a higher high and higher low taking place in MACD with confirming signal line. And the same thing holding true for the green DI and ADX. So the conditions on this are in pretty good shape. Let's look at the Qs real quick. And again, I'll start with all 4 time frames. The only thing that's more dramatic that I have said over and over again is that the Qs are more extended. I actually really expect this to have a little bit more follow through in the short term, just because we had a pretty nice, let's look at this monthly a little bit closer. So if you notice, we had the strong move and then we went sideways for 3-4 months, and now we're trying to break out again. So I'm looking for, I think this is going to correct, but I think it might actually want to push a little bit higher, and it might spend the month of January maybe pushing a little higher before we see some kind of a reversal, which I still think is in the works here. I just think it might be a little bit early because we went through this consolidation pattern, and now we're getting a little bit of follow through. But again, if I'm going through the time frames, the one time frame that I think is controlling the market for the QQQ is the weekly. So for both the S&P and the QQQ, I would say you want to spend more time focusing on what's taking place on this weekly chart. Notice the pullbacks were held very nicely at the 18-week, and notice how it is almost parallel with the 40-week. MACD has not confirmed this new high. Kind of bothers me a little bit, but not to the degree where, I would do anything about it. It just might create a little bit of short-term risk to it. But the fact of the matter is, overall, the conditions on this, I think, are in pretty good shape. Let's take a look at the daily chart, because similar conditions to what I was describing on the S&P, this actually, MACD has not crossed above its signal line yet. Price hasn't really expanded to new highs yet. So we are drifting higher with higher highs and higher lows, and we don't have the confirmation in place. I would probably want to see green DI get a move above all 3 of these peaks. We don't have really the same pattern that we have in the S&P of clearly lower peaks. It's more like sideways. So we kind of need a breakout move to get confirmation. And, I think this is going to end one of 2 ways. I think we're either going to really jet away and have a big month of January and create an overbought extended move that creates a reason for profit taking and a reversal to take place, or we're going to keep drifting higher and we're going to start to see more signs of momentum divergence with volatility increasing. So that's the kind of thing I'm on the lookout for. And I think that's what we need to key on. Make sure you're doing this type of analysis on all your stocks once a week, and hit that like button for me, and we'll talk to you next time. Thanks.